It's a beautiful morning. Let's get this day started indeed. Oh, hey Alfred, how you doing this morning? You're not still frightened from that campfire story last night about Cropsey, that urban legend that everybody tells everybody around here? I've been here 2 seasons, nothing's ever happened like that. It's just a story to keep the kids scared so they behave themselves, trust me. Oh shit. Hey, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. It's time, folks. It's summer camp season, and we're going to talk about a summer camp slasher. But before we talk about that slasher, like, comment, subscribe. Join me here. I greatly would appreciate that. Today, we're going to talk about 1981's The Burning. The Burning dropped on May 8th of 1981. It's an hour and 31 minutes long, and it's rated R. Now, this story was co-written by none other than the infamous Harvey Weinstein, and this was Miramax's, although Miramax wasn't what it was in the 90s, first film. Harvey and his brother were desperate to get in the movie business. He had heard the urban legend about Cropsey in upstate New York, where he used to go to summer camp, and I have friends that my wife and I hang out with that are from that area. They know the urban legend very well, and he wrote a story around that urban legend because at the time, low-budget slasher films were all the craze, thanks to Halloween at the time. Sean, by the time they got to going on production on this, Friday the 13th was already completed and getting ready to drop in 1980. And so yeah, let's talk about it. They got Tony Maylam to direct this film. Tony Maylam had not directed a feature film up to that point. He was directing rock documentaries up until that point, and this was his first feature film. He would go on later on. He did some other projects, but the one I remember mostly is later on he did a film called Split Second, starring Rutger Hauer, which I think I am going to review this Halloween season, so keep on the lookout for that. Our cast here is filled with some pretty notable actors that went on later on and have much bigger careers, and we'll get, as we go through the list of actors, you'll recognize some of these names right away. First up is Brian Matthews, plays Todd. He is a camp counselor at Camp Stonewater. We actually see him as a younger version of himself in the beginning of the film at Camp Blackfoot, where we see the creation of what would become the slasher of Cropsey. Brian Backer plays Alfred. He is kind of this loner, geeky kind of kid, quiet, who gets picked on a lot at camp, who Todd kind of takes under his wings. We'll get into that. Jason Alexander, yes, George Costanza is in this film as Dave, and Jason Alexander, I don't know what he did in a previous life, but he's always looked 40, and even here he kind of looks 40, but he is charismatic, and we can see where George Costanza's beginnings come from, because his character definitely has a lot of George Costanza in him, although he's a lot more confident in this film. Fisher Stevens is in this film as Woodstock. Fisher Stevens would go on to have quite a bit of career. He was in Short Circuit 1 and 2 and other projects as well. Leah Aries plays Michelle. She is the other adult camp counselor, and she would later go on to be in Bloodsport. She did other things, but I always remember her from Bloodsport as Van Damme's kind of love interest. And Holly Hunter's in this film as a glorified cameo, but she is in this film, and this is her first feature film as well, along with Fisher Stevens and Jason Alexander's. Being this film, we set up our big bad and the urban legend of Cropsey. Cropsey is the caretaker at this camp, Camp Blackfoot, and he is a total prick and an alcoholic, and he's always giving the kids shit. Well, one night, Todd and some of the other boys from this camp decide to play a prank on Cropsey. They put this skull in his bed, or on this table next to his bed, and they cover it in worms and dirt, and they kind of put candles in it. And they wake him up, and he starts screaming uncontrollably, and he knocks the skull out onto his bed, and he lights on fire, although those legs in that shot are actually Tom Savini on fire. And then it cuts to a stuntman doing the full burn, and Cropsey runs down to the lake, disappears into the water, never to be seen again by the people at the camp, although he does get taken to the hospital in New York City, where he spends many, many months recovering with skin grafts and whatnot. And what is left of Cropsey by the time he is healthy enough to leave the hospital is basically a melted shell of a man, and all he wants is vengeance. And we see that pretty quickly as he picks up a prostitute, and as she's all for what they're going to do until she sees him, and then she wants him to leave, and he doesn't take kindly to that because he kills her in a graphic way, thanks to the great Tom Savini. Cropsey makes his way back to not Camp Blackfoot, but Camp Stonewater, and starts stalking kids and killing them in very gory ways. And to make this plot synopsis quick and easy, We have kill after kill as we get to know our camp kids and counselors, and it all culminates in this raft trip where we get this glorious scene and the biggest set piece of the film in terms of graphic violence, although we do see a lot of graphic violence along the way. This is a very gory film, very well done film by Tom Savini in the makeup department. We get that awesome raft scene where the kids, all their canoes get taken by Cropsy, and the kids make a raft, and some of the kids are going back to the camp to get help. And they come upon one of the canoes, and Cropsy pops up out of the canoe with the shears over his head, like at the beginning of my intro, starts slashing them to pieces. There's blood going everywhere. Fingers get cut off of Fisher Stevens' character. Just a great horror set piece. And then we get that final showdown in the mines where Todd and Alfred have to kill Cropsy, and they do in a very gory, very violent way. And then we get that campfire at the end with the guys recanting the urban legend of Cropsy, and that is The Burning. What to like about this film? For an early 80s slasher film, they do a really nice job with us getting to know the kids, at least some of them. Some of them we don't, but you know, we get a lot of personality from the kids, especially Jason Alexander's character, Fisher Stevens' character, and this other boy that's always hanging out with them. We get to hang out with them a little bit. They're very likable characters. You don't actually want to see them get hurt, or even some of the girls are very likable. They play the kids as kind of normal teenagers with a lot of personality, very likable. Not everybody's likable here, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the kids are. So when the killing starts, you don't actually want to see them die. Where in some of the Friday the 13th films, there's a bunch of kids that I don't care if they die. I just want to see Jason kill them in very gory ways. So that kind of differentiates this film from some of the Friday the 13th films, or maybe some of the other slasher films for sure. And what also helps is you get the great Tom Savini doing what he does best, killing kids in very gory and graphic ways. And there's a cool special feature on this Blu-ray from Scream Factory about Tom. It's on YouTube too, you can find it. About his work on The Burning. I mean, he was just coming off of Friday the 13th and The Prowler, and he got offered to do Friday the 13th Part 2, but he turned it down to go do this film because he got offered to come up by Harvey Weinstein. And he worked very closely with Tony Maylam to deliver some really cool, really awesome slasher effects, and he knocks it out of the park like he always did back in the day. Because he was going from one film to the next. As a matter of fact, right after this film, he wanted to do Alone in the Dark with Jack Scholler, who edited this film. So basically, he met Jack Scholler in this film and worked with him on Alone in the Dark, and then he went on to do Friday the 13th Part 4, Creepshow, Day of the Dead. I mean, Tom Savini's a legend in this business. And me and Dale _A from the Bat and Sweater podcast got to talk to him a little bit about The Burning, and he said he had 3 days to make the mask and the makeup appliances for Cropsy. That is, and he's not completely happy with it, but for 3 days to work on it, it looks pretty damn cool when they actually do show Cropsy's face. And they don't show it often. You don't really get a really good look at it until towards the end of the film in the climax. And it looks really good in the lighting that it's given. So I know he only had 3 days, but he pulled miracles out of his ass in those 3 days. So good job for Tom Savini. Tom Savini, I said that, turned down Friday the 13th Part 2. Cropsy is a well-known urban legend in upstate New York. Again, my wife and I have friends from New York that live down here in North Carolina. We go out with them once in a while. And I brought this movie up, and Nick... the husband said he was really well aware of the urban legend of Cropsy. And that's where they got the idea for this film. The distorted Cropsy POV, the cameraman or the cinematographer rubbed Vaseline around the edges of the camera to give that distorted look when Cropsy's stalking people around the camp and whatnot. Most of the night scenes in the forest, not the campfire stuff, that was shot at night, but most of the night scenes, you can tell during the film. It's actually one of the negatives because you can tell it's really obvious that they're shooting day for night. But most of those wandering around the forest scenes when it's nighttime is actually daytime. And they found a mine to shoot the original ending was supposed to take place in a boathouse, but it was deemed unsafe. And they found this copper mine close by, and because they shot this at a real camp in upstate New York, outside of Buffalo. And they actually shifted the location to this copper mine. And then the final scene where they killed Cropsy took place in a barn because the cave had a cave-in one night. They shot there one day. They came back the next day, and they noticed that there was a little bit of a cave-in, and they deemed it unsafe, and they shot the final shots in a barn around the camp area. Overall, this is a really good slasher film. It has definitely hints of giallo to it, the way it's shot and that. Tony Maylam does a nice job with the directing. I don't think it's the best directed slasher film, but I like this slasher a lot. It's one that didn't get talked about a lot for a very long time. I think it wasn't available for a very long time on video. I had a copy off of eBay that was a copy of a copy. When the 90s, when eBay started to become a thing in the late 90s, I bought one along with Cannibal Holocaust and a few other films. But this Blu-ray from Scream Factory is really well done. The transfer is pretty damn good. There's some cool special features on it. So if you're a fan of this film or you just love slashers, I think you can still get this Blu-ray. I'm not quite sure. It might be out of print. I haven't looked it up in a while. But The Burning is a really good slasher film from the slasher heyday of the early 80s. And, you know, with Tom Savini's effects, just on the kills alone, it's worth a watch. But it has a decent story about this caretaker that gets burned in a prank that went wrong. And he decides to come back and take vengeance. The one other negative I have about this film is Alfred, the character of Alfred, played by Brian Backer. He ends up being kind of the lead later on, although Todd's lead, I mean, you don't really have a definitive lead in here, but they set him up kind of, and they even kind of set him up as a red herring in a very weak, I don't know if they really did, but it kind of tried to make you believe that he might be the killer, although we know it's Cropsey. His character, I don't like his character that much. I prefer some of the other kids like Dave and Woodstock. Those kids have way more charisma and they're way more entertaining to be around. His character's just there. He doesn't get a whole lot to do besides get picked on until the very end when he helps Todd dispatch of Cropsey. But overall, he's just kind of useless for the most part. So his character could have got excised from the script. He really doesn't play that big of a part. And, you know, he's a little bit of a negative of this film. But I really like this film. It's a good, solid slasher film from the early 80s, again, in the slasher heyday. So at the end of the day, I would give The Burning a 7.75 out of 10. It's really worth your time if you're a slasher fan. It's really well done, the effects. And I like this film. I always have. And don't let the fact that Harvey Weinstein had anything to do with it ruin your good time. Because screw the Weinsteins. But also, before I go, the director and the Weinsteins, which later on would come into play because they screwed with directors a lot, butted heads on how to end the film. Tom Savini said he didn't want to be stuck in the middle. He liked working with everybody, and but there was some headbutting on how to end the film, which now looking back at the Weinstein's career, fucking with directors, I guess you could see that even early on they were dicks. But overall, again, 7.75 for that film right there, The Burning. Have you ever seen this film? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share it. It's really great. Would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with reviews for Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 to continue a little bit of a summer slasher camp horror series here. But until then, hope you're all doing well out there, and bye.